Outside, the snow is falling on a harsh New England winter. Inside, 4 young girls are feeling the bitter sting of poverty. Their father is far away, serving as a chaplain in the Civil War, and the holidays look decidedly bleak. Despite the biting cold outside, the living room they share remains a warm, safe haven. However, it also crackles with the restless tension of 4 sisters who want more out of life than their meager circumstances allow. The architect of this famous domestic world was Louisa May Alcott. She drew from her own life for inspiration, as her upbringing mirrored this struggle. This brief biography from the book's opening notes her work in a hospital during the Civil War. Alcott knew grueling, relentless labor firsthand, and she translated her own family's history of financial hardship directly into this semi-autobiographical fiction. Little Women lacks the artificial sweetness of a completely invented fairy tale. The story carries the unmistakable weight of lived experience, forged from the severe reality of Alcott's own difficult life. Reading the opening pages, we find ourselves in that faded parlor, sketching 4 distinct archetypes. First is Margaret, or Meg, the eldest, described as plump and fair, with a conscious pride in her white hands. Scanning further down, we meet Jo. She's tall, thin, and colt-like, characterized by a flyaway look. She's a tomboy who resents the social expectation to grow into a traditional woman. The text continues on to Elizabeth, known as Beth, the shy soul her father calls Little Tranquility. Finally, there is Amy, the youngest, a polite, pale snow maiden, mindful of her aristocratic manners. Their mother, Mrs. March, sets the philosophical tone for their lives early on. She teaches the girls to bear their little burdens without complaint, casting their daily struggles as a moral pilgrimage. The central tension of the story rests on whether these 4 distinct personalities can reconcile their grand ambitions with the daily demands of a home that has very little to spare. As we read on, the sisters attempt to be good pilgrims by expanding their world. In this passage, Jo notices the wealthy boy next door, Laurie, and makes a firm decision to know him. By bringing Laurie into their fold, the book draws a sharp contrast. The March home is impoverished but bursts with life, while the Lawrence mansion next door is opulent but utterly silent. It is a practical lesson that wealth alone does not provide happiness. On this page, the characters discuss their castles in the air. This is Alcott's metaphor for their deepest ambitions: fame for Jo, high society for Amy, and a lovely home for Meg. But dreaming is the easy part. The book maintains a deep respect for everyday, unglamorous duty over these lofty ambitions. To prove this point, Alcott writes a sequence where Mrs. March deliberately steps back. She allows the girls to manage the household entirely on their own for a week, letting the chores pile up and the meals burn. When the experiment fails, Mrs. March delivers the moral. As highlighted in this text, she tells a story about an old woman's spell for happiness. When you feel discontented, think over your blessings and be grateful. Through burnt dinners and chaotic afternoons, the girls realize their grand, airy castles will collapse without the foundational stones of daily discipline and shared duty. Up to a point, their trials are mostly comic struggles with vanity. Here, the text details Amy wearing a clothespin on her nose to reshape what she calls her offending feature. But soon the narrative takes a sharp turn towards severe reality. While trying to help a desperately poor immigrant family, Beth contracts scarlet fever. Suddenly, the threat of death enters the March home. A paralyzing fear grips the sisters. The prospect of losing the quiet, selfless pet of the family forces them to drop their personal grievances and rally around her bedside. This intense crucible burns away their remaining childishness. Compared to a genuinely empty chair at the dinner table, Jo's desire for literary fame and Amy's wish for aristocratic grace suddenly feels small. Beth's illness serves as the narrative anchor of their adolescence. The fear of that empty chair makes their previous vanities vanish, revealing that their shared affection is the only asset that actually matters. The tension finally breaks with Beth's recovery. This brings us to a joyful, peaceful era of the story, clearly marked by the chapter heading, Pleasant Meadows. That peace is cemented by the resolution of the story's overarching conflict. Mr. March finally returns home from the war. In this dialogue, he observes his daughters and notes that their early childhood burdens are in a fair way to tumble off. As the girls transition into adulthood, Mrs. March explicitly lays out her core philosophy. In this speech, she states her ambition is for her girls to be loved and chosen by a good man, warning them against marrying rich men merely for money. This philosophy is immediately put to the test. Meg is forced to choose between the approval of her wealthy, intimidating Aunt March and the love of Laurie's impoverished tutor, John Brooke. Meg ultimately defies her aunt, choosing to marry John Brooke despite his poverty. This act validates the family's pilgrimage, as she chooses love and mutual respect over financial security. The text paints a final, peaceful tableau of the four girls gathered around their parents. As the text reads, the curtain falls upon this first act of their domestic drama. This story achieved massive, enduring success because it performs a quiet magic trick. It takes deeply mundane things, everyday chores, quiet endurance, and sibling squabbles, and elevates them to the level of heroism. Little Women endures because it validates a quiet, difficult form of growth, finding purpose and fulfillment within the bounds of one's own home.